Hey, this is Kristofer Dommin, and you're listening to Into the Unknown Radio Podcast.
I am a stranger staring and immaculate pairing with.
What is up, guys? Welcome to episode 3 in my Making Noise series. I am Dan P, coming at you live, as always, from the home of heavy metal, Birmingham in the UK. This week my guest is Kristofer Dommin from the band Dommin, plus his recent collaborations with the Oztones. We'll be chatting about the early days of the band, through to them signing with Roadrunner Records, what's been going on with them since, the future of the band, and a bunch more. So stay right here on Into the Unknown Radio. So, Chris, firstly, thank you for being on my podcast. I've been a fan of yours for around 15 years now, so this is quite a privilege for me. I'm going to jump straight into the questions, and I always like to start at the beginning. So I'd like you to take us back. How did you get started in making music, and how did the band Dommin come to be?
So going back to the beginning, I pretty much got my first guitar. It was just a used guitar at the local music shop for about $125, and I started learning like Danzig songs and Metallica songs and things like that, and eventually joined a punk rock band. I was probably in grade 8, I think, when that all happened, and I pretty much did that for about 7 years or so. And what really sort of motivated me to form my own thing was because, I was just a guitar player, and I was totally happy being the guitar player. I didn't necessarily think that I had a great voice or that I was, had the charisma or the stage presence to really be front and center or the center of attention or anything like that. But after being in previous bands and working with so many different musicians, which, I just found most of them to be very flaky growing up, I just got tired of relying on people. And it was really the desire to be independent and not allow anybody else to hinder what I wanted to do because they decided not to show up for rehearsal or because they were too busy being too much of a rock star. That's really what motivated me to form my own thing. And so, I just really wanted to be able to do what I wanted to do and not be dependent on anybody else.
So, I know who I hear within your music, but I'm interested if there are any bands in particular that you would say influence your writing style.
I've been influenced by so many different bands. I think when I was really young, it was really Danzig and Metallica. When Nirvana came out, I was a huge Nirvana fan. And then pretty much it went into Rammstein and Typo Negative and Life of Agony and those kinds of bands and the whole New York hardcore scene. And then, eventually I fell in love with Depeche Mode, and I actually found out about Depeche Mode through Rammstein. So I was sort of a late bloomer when it came to Depeche Mode. And I think it was really sort of their writing style and their lyric style that influenced me in terms of being a writer tremendously. And so, I think, and my love of Typo Negative, they're probably my number one band. Pretty much if you mix Typo and Depeche Mode and a little bit of Danzig, you get Dommin.
I know you're doing a fair bit more solo material at the moment, and we'll touch on that later. It's not exactly Dommin the band, so where is the influence coming from for that, and can you see any major influence changes in the future?
I think it's impossible to know really, but I just know that I'm always being influenced by something, sort of whatever I'm listening to. So I'm doing a lot of solo stuff lately that's really Americana influenced or early rock and roll influenced by Elvis and Roy Orbison and Johnny Cash and that kind of stuff. And that's a totally different songwriting style. A lot of it's more storytelling and more blues based. So you never know. And I'm a huge Sinatra fan. So, I mean, just, the way that those songs were written, their kind of verse chorus structure and that is a lot different than, your average, pop song or something. So yeah, I'm open to anything, and, I'll listen to almost anything.
This is closure. Farewell to all that found me. Now it is over.
I originally came across Dommin, the band, at the tail end of 2005. I remember seeing a quite striking image of a pair of piercing eyes on MySpace, and it piqued my interest. I'm fairly sure Mend Your Misery was either out at this point or due to come out not long after. So at this point, what plans did you have with regard to the band, and did you foresee hitting the big time not too long after?
Yeah, you're right. It was about 2005. That's when, I had met Lucas Banker and Logan Mader. They had a producer team called Dirty Icon. And Lucas had heard my demo through a guitar player for another band that I had auditioned for, just because I was trying to play with anybody and do anything to just kind of move music forward. And he had heard my demo and called me and said, we got to work together. And so at that time, I had a rock band, but it wasn't called Dommin. Dommin was actually a side project. It was more of an electronic thing, very Depeche Mode influenced. But once I had a team, because I had my band, but once I had a team that I felt was helping me propel it forward, that really helped me hone in and focus and have a direction. And so I merged the name of my electronic project and my rock band into one. And that's kind of how it all started. And we did, when I first met them, we did a 5-song session. That was the first 5 songs on the Mend Your Misery record. Not necessarily in order, but the first 5 ones that we recorded. And then I did another session with them about 6 months later. And I want to say it was January of 2006. And we put that together, and that was the Mend Your Misery album, which we've actually re-released, and it's, available now on all the streaming platforms. But yeah, so at that time, we took that photo of the eyes, and I wanted it to be real, theatrical and real mysterious and, almost like a movie poster. That was kind of the goal or the direction or whatever. So, but we didn't necessarily know we were going to hit big time or anything like that. I don't think that was ever the thought. It was just, let's put together an album. Let's put it out. Let's do as much as possible on our own and see if anybody else is interested in helping, in being another teammate and being a partner and in getting the music out there.
Sweet, it's you I desire. It's you I desire.
So the next thing I knew, you guys had signed with Roadrunner Records and were bringing out Love Is Gone, and had some pretty sweet support slots, if I remember correctly. Take us back, if you would, to those early days with Roadrunner and on the road initially.
Yeah, so we signed with Roadrunner Records, and, that courtship took nearly 2 years, because I want to say our first interaction with Monty was he came out to a show to see us at the Roxy in Hollywood. And that was, I want to say it was early 2007, maybe late 2006. And, and we had showcased for them again. They flew us to New York to do another showcase for them and the rest of the label. And so it wasn't until June of 2008 that we actually signed with them. So there was a lot of in-between time where they would check in and be like, how's the band doing? And I think a lot of that is just to make sure that the band is doing the work on their own. And, that you don't just expect some label to come in and do everything for you. So, yeah, so it was a bit of a courtship, and it took a little bit of time, and, pretty much 1.5 years, 2 years later, we actually signed with Roadrunner. And once we had signed with them, we pretty much started recording the record right away. August of 2008, I think we were in the studio, and it was done by December Not that it actually took that long to do, but we'd probably finished all the initial stuff in about a month, and then we kind of kept going back because there wasn't really any plans to release the album until April of '09. But once they knew that, as soon as 2009 hit, they started saying, well, let's get you guys out on the road. So, before that, all we had done is maybe some things up and down the West Coast. So we immediately, I think our first tour was Combi Christ and Blacklight Burns. And then after that, it was Wednesday 13. And it was really, Birthday Massacre was the first real nationwide tour where we were kind of getting away from the West Coast and the Southwest of the US. And the Birthday Massacre, they were wonderful. We toured with them twice, actually. And they're lovely, friendly Canadians. So, just great people and really cool music too. So it was a great introduction into, touring life, to go out with them and to be so welcomed and, see the whole country, which, we hadn't done prior to that.
How was touring for you guys at this time? To probably go from, say, more localized shows to touring the world, basically?
After the Birthday Massacre tour, we went on tour with Lacuna Coil that summer, and that led to us touring with them again. They took us on our first tour through Europe, which I think our first show with them was in Manchester, and that was our first time to the UK and to Western Europe. So that was a great experience because everybody in that band is just wonderful, and we're so appreciative of them for really giving us two shots, one in the States and one in Europe, and there was only a couple days off before we had jumped on the Hymn tour right after that. And that went to some of the same places in Germany and the Netherlands and the UK. So we pretty much had gone to the UK twice in the span of 2 months, which was really cool. And, and then after that, we went back to the States and continued the Hymn tour there. And then after that, we were out with Volbeat. And I think after that is when we went out with Birthday Massacre again and Black Veil Brides. And yeah, we pretty much, we did a few festivals too. We did Download. We played the main stage there. And Rock and Ring, Rock and Park in Germany. And around that time, we did a couple of opening dates for Bullet for My Valentine. And, pretty much ended the album cycle with a Soundwave tour in Australia.
So with all of these amazing support slots under your belt, how were you guys being received at this time?
I think generally, all the shows we played, we've always seemed to grab new fans every time we went out with somebody. There was, definitely a jump in the fan base. I want to say probably the most successful was the Hymn tour. I think probably our music is similar in kind of aesthetic and vibe and that kind of thing. We definitely gained fans on Lacuna Coil and Volbeat and, the Birthday Massacre and all that. But I think it was the Hymn tour that we personally noticed a big difference to where after that tour, we pretty much found out that there were certain cities we could go back to in the States and do our own headlining show and, sell out kind of small venues. So yeah, we definitely noticed it after that tour. All those experiences were great in their own way and definitely taught us a lot.
Do you have any moments that you're particularly proud of as a musician, or moments that stand out to you so far?
In terms of standout moments, I feel like anytime that there was a surprise that comes out as a standout moment, because all the shows were great, and all the experiences looking back on them now, they all were pretty special. But the certain moments that really surprise you is like when we did the Download show the day before our main stage performance. We did play an acoustic show. And, it had been since we did the Hymn tour, 3 months later, whatever it was, we came back and I didn't know what to expect. I was expecting, 6 people to be standing out in front of the acoustic stage because it wasn't even something that was heavily promoted, I don't think. And, to go out there and see, a giant crowd of people all singing the songs, that was really, to me, a touching moment that I felt very connected to the audience and the people that were there. Because, from the tours that we did, we always kind of hang out at the merch booth and watch the shows and enjoy the show with the rest of the fans that are there as well. And, we actually made, beyond fans, I think we made some friends. And to come back and see them, standing front and center was really, really touching, I think, for everybody in the band.
I ask every guest to pick a song of theirs that they would consider their finest work. I'm always interested for a little insight into this kind of thing. So if you could pick one song you're particularly proud of, or that means the most to you, what would it be?
In terms of my finest work, I'd have to say, I feel like I can confidently say that I have not released it yet. I've got so many songs, sort of demoed in various ways. Some of it's just little notes on my phone that I know are going to be great songs. And to me, I think I've yet to put out my finest work. I feel like in a lot of ways I don't necessarily challenge myself too much, but there are some things that I really can't wait to release and really tackle that I feel like are at a different level. So hopefully I will get to those. But in terms of what's out there, I think you have to sort of let the fans decide, let people decide, and they'll probably all say My Heart, Your Hands. It's the one that instantly caught the label's attention. It's the one that, people seem to come away with remembering the most from shows and all that. So I think, I think that song's a little bit of magic in that way. And so people probably would say that that's the finest Dommin song if they had to choose one out of all of them. For me personally, there's a song called The Saddest Dream off the third record we did called Beautiful Crutch. And that one is, all the songs are personal, but that one's special. So if you get a chance to listen to that one means a lot to me.
What have we become? I no longer see the sun, and life's become a dream.
I'm noticing that a lot of your music is self-released these days. Can you give us some insight into what happened with Roadrunner Records?
Yeah, pretty much everything we do now is self-released. When we put out our second album, Rise, that was, I think there was a German label, Eternal Sound, that kind of did a licensing deal for that for the German territory. But other than that, we've just been putting everything out ourselves. In terms of what happened with Roadrunner, I've talked about it a lot. It's, it's not cool to say you were dropped, because that means you weren't doing well enough for the label to keep you, but that's the fact of the matter. They had put a lot of money into us, but what really went down was it wasn't just we got dropped because, I'm sure if we were selling millions of records, we would still be on there. Any label would be crazy to let you go, but that's not what we were doing. And, a big part of that is when the day we went to record the second record, the very first day after pre-production, and I had been, a year through demoing stuff with different producers and, trying different songs, songwriting sessions, all that stuff. But once that was all done and it was like day one of doing the recording, I started to see a lot of, I got up in the morning, we were heading to North Hollywood, where the studio was, and I saw a bunch of chatter on Facebook, and it was all this stuff about Roadrunner. And I was like, what is going on? And one of the PR people basically gave me the lowdown and said, the owner of the company has sold his remaining shares, because it was already 25% owned by Warner Music Group, and 75% was owned by the owner, Case Vessels. And he had sold the remaining of his shares and basically resigned. And once that happened, he was our biggest fan, essentially. It was him and Monty. They were the ones championing our band at the label. So once the president left and our A&R got his, layoff slip to go, and, all the PR people got fired because essentially Roadrunner was sort of absorbed into Atlantic Records, which is also owned by Warner Music Group. So because they, a lot of people's positions were made redundant because Atlantic has their own PR people and their own A&Rs and their own promotions department and all that kind of stuff. Lots of people lost their jobs and lots of bands got dropped, and we were one of them. And, It was a terrible time because, we were initially told we've greenlighted your record. We've approved the budget. You record your record. It's on greenlight. Go do it. And so we were like, okay. And so we did it. And then after we had recorded it and we finally started getting final mixes in, we would send them in and kind of not get any response, or the emails would come back very few and far between and very short. And that's when we kind of knew something was up. And, as it turned out, everything all of a sudden had to be approved by people at Atlantic Records who didn't know who the band was, weren't fans, and all our support was gone from the label. So when it came, when they listened to the stuff that we were doing, they just said, no thanks. And that was it. And so that was pretty much the end of that. And so since then, we've had to kind of pull ourselves together after, basically about 2 or 3 years of not really knowing what to do next and not being able to find our way, and, trying to showcase here and there and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, it was, eventually we just said, screw it. We're just going to put it out ourselves. And so we ran 2 successful Pledge Music campaigns. And we released our second album, Rise, and our third album, Beautiful Crutch. And for the last year or so, I've been releasing, songs that are going to be on the next record, which will hopefully come out in spring of 2021.
'Cause every time I leave, I die.
So what does 2020 have in store for Kristofer Dommin, and what is the current status of Dommin the band?
So in terms of 2020, in the meantime, since, I've basically, like I said, I've been putting out Dommin songs so that people can get an idea. I was trying to do just the single thing, which is kind of the way music's going now. It's not so much about the album, but I did a social media poll, and everyone still said I should hold the songs back for an album. So I released 5 songs, and then I was like, well, I guess I'm not going to release the 6th. I'm going to hold everything back and put it out as an album. So for the next year or so, I think I'm just going to finish off the Dommin record. But then also, I've got my solo things that I'm doing, and which is more, it's sort of 2 things rather than one other thing, because I have a solo thing that I'm putting out, kind of more moody, slow music that's not quite Dommin, because it's not quite rock or metal or anything like that. And then I have, I've moved to Australia, and I have like a rockabilly band that I play with down here. And it's a great outlet for those kinds of songs that I've written that are in that kind of Cash, Elvis, Orbison style, bluesy, rootsy, Americana kind of stuff. And so for the next year, I'll be releasing, I hope to be putting out a full album with those guys down here. They're a band called the Oz Tones. So I'm going to release an album with them down here, and continually release my other solo stuff throughout the year. And then that'll hopefully lead to the Dommin stuff that comes out next year.
Because I'm breaking these strings that tie you to me, and it's making me open my eyes and see.
As I'm sure you know, the UK loves Dommin. So is there anything you'd like to say to your fans here in the UK? And do you think you're likely to come back?
Yeah, so to the UK fans, I just want to say thank you very much. I get messages and lots of love on socials and stuff from people in the UK, and they all ask when we're going to come back, and I really just don't know. The one thing that I would, any people that are in bands or musicians or anybody listening, are really, it can almost apply to any sort of field, not just music. But the one thing that we did wrong, and that I really regret, is we stopped. And, when everything went down with Roadrunner, what really should have happened is we should have just gotten a van and hit the road and just toured nonstop. And that would have been the thing to do. And I think the main thing we did wrong was we stopped. We tried to figure things out. We tried to know what our next move was and all that kind of stuff. And I think that was actually the wrong thing to do. Because, all of a sudden everybody had to figure out how they're going to live, and what the next plan was. And that's just made it so much harder to try to do anything with the band in terms of touring. So while we can get together and put music out, and Cameron can send me drum tracks from his house in Santa Rosa, and I can put them all together in a song and put it out. We can always put out music, but in terms of actually getting 4 people and a sound guy and everything that you need and hit the road and leave everything that you're doing for normal life behind, it's not so easy anymore. And so I still have hope, and I still hope that we can do it, and I have every intention to. It's just sort of like the stars have to align a little bit to actually make that happen. Because what we don't want to do is just go and come back with a bunch of debt because, we had to spend so much money on flights and things, and we didn't even break even. That's kind of the fear. Because even, when the tour is over, the debt's still there. So, we have to be smart about it. So that being said, I want to thank the fans in the UK because they've always been so great to us. The UK in general has been great to us. I mean, we got video play there. We did festivals there and, did a lot of touring there. And the people have just been great. So I just want to say thank you for listening to the music, for keeping it alive, for continuing to share it. I hope that you continue to do that because, we can still make new fans even though we're not touring by people just saying, hey, check this out, for every new song that comes out or whatever it is. But yeah, mostly I'm just grateful that I had the experiences that I had. And, if I can't make it over with Dommin, my hope is maybe I can make it over with, whether it's the rockabilly band I'm doing or solo or something. Like, for me, music is just the way I live. Even if I have to do something else to put food on the table, music is what I have to do to feel normal. If I don't do it, I start to get kind of depressed. So I'm always going to be doing music, and what I can do with it in terms of touring and stuff, that's just sort of dependent on how life goes, and what opportunities come my way and what I can create with the little, limited resources and time that I have. So, yeah, so that's it. So thank you to everybody in the UK for listening to Dommin and for sharing it and for being a part of my life and this whole experience.
With my heart in your hands, losing your grip. With my heart in your hands, losing your grip. I'm so afraid that you'll leave me.
I can't let you sign off without plugging the hell out of your social pages. So give us the rundown. Where can we like, subscribe, and most importantly, listen to Dommin?
If you want to, keep up with what we're doing, follow Dommin on Facebook, follow Dommin on Instagram. We do have a mailing list, but we haven't really used it all that much. Probably will in the future. I mean, the email lists are definitely the way you want to go because you never know with social media what's going to change and what algorithms changed and whatnot. So, follow us on those things, or if they want to, follow what I'm doing solo, they can, follow me at Kristofer Dommin, and that's on, Facebook and MySpace, Facebook and Instagram and Twitter and all that kind of stuff. I'm on all 3. I don't use them that much because I kind of hate social media, and if I didn't do music, I'd probably wouldn't be on it to begin with, or I'd probably have one of those accounts with, no face on it, so I could just follow what I want to follow but not interact. So, I'm a bit, I don't know if shy is the right word, but I just don't feel like I need to voice my opinion about everything or that people should even listen to my opinion about anything other than this is the song I just put out kind of thing. So, but you can follow us and keep up to date with what we're doing on those socials or through our email list and, that kind of thing.
Okay, guys, it looks like we're all out of time. Thanks to my guest this episode, Kristofer Dommin of the band Dommin. Thank you, dude. It's been my privilege.
Thank you so much for having me on the show. I really appreciate it. I appreciate you reaching out to me. So hopefully we can do it again sometime.
Thank you, guys. I'll catch you on the next one. Until then, take care of yourselves and each other.